Welcome, gamers! Can the Dimensity-powered Ultimate handle the heat of PC gaming? Today on Vanzee Gaming, we're putting this powerhouse to the test. We've lined up 20 massive PC titles to run on the GameHub Emulator. From the high-speed racing in Forza Horizon 5 to the zombie-filled malls of Dead Rising, we're going to see if this chipset is the real deal for mobile emulation. Let's jump straight into the benchmark. Exploring Los Santos on a phone is still mind-blowing. With the Dimensity-powered Ultimate, GTA 5 runs decently at around 20 FPS on GameHub. It's definitely playable for some casual mayhem, but for a smoother ride through the city, don't forget to play around with your resolution scales to find that perfect balance. Get over here. Mortal Kombat 9 is an absolute blast on this chipset, hitting a very smooth 50 FPS. The fatalities look crisp, and the combat feels incredibly responsive. To keep those frames locked during intense X-ray moves, be sure to optimize your driver settings within the GameHub menu. Undercover action in Hong Kong feels surprisingly great. This hardware pulls off about 25 FPS in Sleeping Dogs, which is solid for an open-world title on mobile. If you want to keep the frame rate steady during high-speed chases, tweak your internal graphical presets for a much better experience. Experience the golden era of crime with Mafia II. This processor maintains a steady 25 FPS, capturing the 1940s atmosphere perfectly. It's a very immersive experience, but to avoid any potential dips in busy areas, fine-tune your box 86 configuration settings to keep the performance stable. Racing in Mexico on a mobile device is a total flex. The Dimensity-powered Ultimate pushes Forza Horizon 5 at 25 FPS on GameHub. It's a very heavy title for any phone, so make sure to adjust your rendering mode to squeeze out every bit of power from the silicon. Welcome to the floating city of Colombia. Bioshock Infinite manages around 20 FPS on this chipset, and the art style still looks stunning. To make the shooting mechanics feel a bit more responsive, try experimenting with different DXVK versions in your GameHub settings. The global bioterror threat in Resident Evil 6 continues at a steady 20 FPS. The action-heavy sequences remain fairly stable on this hardware. Since this game can be quite demanding, finding the right balance in your setup will definitely help you survive those intense boss fights. High-speed chases in Need for Speed Most Wanted 2012 never get old. This processor handles the race at a playable 20 FPS. It's fast and fun, but if you want to avoid stuttering, don't hesitate to lower some of the post-processing effects like motion blur or shadows. Survival horror on the go. Resident Evil Revelations 2 delivers a decent 20 FPS on this chipset, keeping the spooky atmosphere alive. To maintain a steady pace while exploring the dark corridors, adjust your container's memory settings to prevent any unwanted crashes or slowdowns. In space, no one can hear you scream, but they can see you play at 40 FPS. This hardware absolutely crushes dead space on GameHub. Since it runs so smoothly, feel free to push your graphics higher and enjoy the terrifying details of the Ishimura without any lag. Prepare to die, but with surprisingly decent performance. Dark Souls 2 runs at about 20 FPS on this silicon. It's enough to handle the challenge, but to ensure you don't miss a crucial dodge, tweak your CPU affinity settings for much better frame pacing and input response. Ezio's final journey in Assassin's Creed Revelations looks great at 20 to 30 FPS. This hardware handles the crowded streets of Constantinople quite well. Experiment with your environment variables in the emulator to find the ultimate sweet spot for this legendary adventure. Swing through New York at 20 to 30 FPS in the Amazing Spider-Man. This chipset makes the web-slinging feel surprisingly fluid on GameHub. For the best visual clarity, adjust your texture filtering to keep the city buildings looking sharp while you're flying through the air. Welcome to the Rook Islands in Far Cry 3. This processor maintains a playable 20 FPS amidst the jungle chaos. To keep the action flowing smoothly against the pirates, fine-tune your rendering resolution to make sure the tropical environment doesn't chug during heavy combat. The Dragonborn arrives on mobile, but it's a heavy climb. On high res, this chipset only hits around 15 FPS in Skyrim, which feels pretty sluggish. You'll definitely need to lower your resolution or add performance mods if you want to make this epic journey truly playable. Co-op horror in the sun. Resident Evil 5 delivers a smooth 25 FPS on this hardware. The action stays consistent even when things get crowded. Tweak your shader cache settings to avoid any micro stutters during those big explosions and cinematic cutscenes. Solving crimes in LA Noire is a tough task, as this silicon only manages about 15 FPS. It's a bit of a struggle for the current setup. Try reducing the internal game resolution to get a more responsive interrogation experience and smoother facial animations. Taking on the Uruk-hai in Shadow of Mordor is a challenge, hitting only 10 to 15 FPS with some minor graphical bugs. This hardware is being pushed to its absolute limit here. Check for updated drivers to potentially fix those glitches and boost the overall speed. Relive the Cold War in Call of Duty Black Ops at a decent 20 FPS. This chipset handles the explosive campaign moments fairly well on GameHub. To keep the gunplay feeling tight and responsive, be sure to optimize your input lag settings in the emulator's menu. Surviving the zombie horde in Dead Rising at 30 to 40 FPS is an absolute blast. This hardware handles the massive amount of entities on screen surprisingly well. Feel free to crank up the settings a bit since this game runs like a dream on the Dimensity-powered. That's a wrap for our 20-game test on the Dimensity-powered Ultimate. For a mid-range chipset, it's honestly impressive how well it handles these titles through GameHub. Which of these games were you most surprised to see running today? Let me know your thoughts and what we should test next in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Vanzee Gaming. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.